You are now listening to the fastest show on iSports Radio. My name is Daryl Kinsey Jr. welcoming you, taking a lap of the extra mile for today, January 26, 2023. And it is green flag for season 7 here, getting ready for the Rolex 24 and IMSA. I'm totally not doing this intro a second time. We'll get to that in a minute. But of course, to welcome in my co-host of the evening, Christopher Lehman. Chris?
Good evening, Daryl, for the second time tonight. Hope you had a good off season.
Had a great off season. For those of you that are trying to figure out what's going on, if you're listening live, had a little bit of a technical difficulty. We fixed that. We'll get into that a little bit later. We had some behind the scenes. We had some drama here at iSports Radio, but we fixed it, and we're back here with you. So I'm so glad to be back here, getting to talk racing once again. Usually we would have a third voice here, Michael Ward, but as I said in the aborted start, as we'll call it, Michael is taking some time for himself at the start of the year. We will hear him later on this season, so it's just, he's taking a little bit of a time. Michael, if you're listening, you know, we're here for you. We love you, and we are definitely going to be blowing up that text thread talking to you this weekend as we get to the Rolex 24. So things are exciting here with IMSA coming up, but yeah, it's been a fun off season. It's been busy for me at work, but really the weekends, watching the last of the NFL season, just counting down the days till we go back racing, and just hearing all of the news that has been going around with silly season and everybody getting back in their cars and who's going to have what sponsor, and Ferrari talking about they're going to be a second faster before they inevitably blow the season later on this year. This is the fun part of the year, Chris, because we really don't know what's about to happen, and everything just feels new and fresh and exciting, and you're just counting down the days until we start all these seasons again.
Absolutely, Daryl. You know, we're both NFL fans, and nothing is, well, unless your team's in the Super Bowl, nothing is as exciting as the offseason. What free agents are you getting? Who are you drafting this year? What coaching changes are being made? And that's what we've been going through this offseason. There's been some quote unquote coaching changes in Formula One. We've had a carousel of team principals changing. Some new people coming into the seats, not only in Formula One, but obviously in every motorsport league or whatever you want to call it across the whole world. Every single series is having turnover this year. I mean, we only cover a couple of them. Don't have time to cover all of them, but yeah, it's an exciting time of year for race fans as a whole, and I cannot wait to, over the next couple of weeks as we lead up into the Daytona 500, go over all of it with you, and we're gonna, obviously break down every major storyline that's happened in the big 3 or 4 series that we cover. So I'm looking forward to it, Daryl.
Yeah, well, let's get started with our first race preview of the season. I've been waiting so long to say that. It's my favorite race of the year, the Rolex 24 at Daytona. IMSA, my favorite series. I love sports car racing. One of my first live races that wasn't the NHRA that I saw was, of course, the Cadillac Grand Prix of DC all the way back in 2002. But we are here for the Rolex. 61 cars are checked into Daytona. They had some practice sessions today. And the new era for for GT prototype, also known as Le Mans Daytona Hypercar. This is the convergence of the Hypercar program and the WEC coming together with a more cost-effective model in IMSA. We've got Cadillac, we've got Porsche, we've got Acura, we've got BMW. All 9 cars were separated in qualifying by less than a second in the top class. New cars, new hybrid technology. Chris, this is probably the biggest race for IMSA with this category since they came back together with the United Sports Car Championship. This is going to be one heck of a race and a heck of a debut for the top class in, well, I was going to say America, but now global endurance racing.
Yeah, and yeah, it's obviously going to be exciting, and it's going to be a huge field this year, which I mean, obviously we're going to talk about here coming up. I think you said like 61 cars or something.
Yeah, 61 for Rolex. Obviously, about half of that will run the full season, but still, that's a lot of cars for this race here at Daytona.
Yeah, so it's gonna be interesting to see, all the cobwebs come off this year. It's been a
Mm-hmm.
long off season for these guys, and so yeah, it's gonna be fun to see, just opening the racing season as a whole. This is the first real big racing event of the year, unless you're a dirt fan and you're watching the Chili Bowl and stuff like that. Obviously, there's some other stuff going on, but this is really the first real pavement race in the U.S. to kick off the season, and what an exciting way to kick off the season, Daryl. It's looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's really fun after having about a month and a half of no racing to get a complete full weekend of running from 2 p.m. on Saturday to 2 p.m. on Sunday. And this, of course, Rolex 24 night racing is a lot more important than what we'll see in Le Mans later this year, although they've got the track lights around Daytona that are on for the fans. So it's not as dark as it could be. Definitely not how it used to be in the olden days of this race, where it would get night and you literally could not see anything around you. God bless them trying to get around the track at that time. But the important thing about this race for me is always, how do these cars get through traffic? Now, we're going to have 28 prototypes between GTP, LMP2, and LMP3. The rest of the field, of course, is going to be filled out by GT3 spec GT Daytona cars in the Pro-Am and the Pro configuration. We'll get to that in a minute, because that was hilarious how that qualifying worked out. But you've got 3 different types of prototypes. That's 3 different classes of speed. And if you're on a GT Daytona, the closing distances, because you're just going to be getting passed by prototypes all night long, the closing speeds for all 3 of these cars are completely different, because I've got the qualifying sheet in front of me. Meyer Shank Racing qualified their Acura ARX 06 on the pole, overall pole, 134.0 was their qualifying time. The LMP2 quick time, PR1 Matthias in Motorsports, a minute 40.541. That's 7-second difference between GTP and LMP2, and it's about over 10 seconds between them and GTD, between the top class and GTD. They're going to have their heads on a swivel in those GTD cars, or they might get run over by a prototype. And that's usually what we see all night long, especially getting into the nights when you have the silver and bronze rated drivers in the car.
What was that? So I apologize, Daryl. I was changing some settings.
You looked zoned out there, but I was just saying the closing rates between the prototypes and the GTs are going to be a talking point all day long with the Rolex 24, especially when we get into the nighttime hours, where you get some of the less experienced drivers. They're tired, and then you've got to figure out which prototype is that coming up behind me and how much lead time do I have to give them.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be, interesting to see, especially like you were saying, at nighttime, visibility's down. You've got the less experienced guys, and yeah, judging what prototype it is and figuring out, what you need to do to make sure that they can get around you safely is definitely going to be a challenge for these guys. And as far as my zoning out, Daryl knows this, but I got a new computer a couple weeks ago, and so I get to play with it couple days for an hour or two, and so just sorry, just kind of taking this time to kind of get things set up how I like it, and changing some different settings now that we're actually recording. This is the first episode, so just changing some things around and kind of getting it set up for the long term, because this will be I won't be using my work laptop anymore. This will be where I'm recording from. So just kind of playing around with a couple things. So.
Yeah, I can see it, and Chris has got a whole battle station set up down there. The computer looks nice, by the way. It's got the LED fans that I see are pulsing there in the left-hand corner. Of course, y'all can't see that, but we get into back to the Rolex 24. The other thing about this race that we haven't talked about a lot, really in the last few years, is reliability. This is going to be our first new car, the GTP, first completely new category in quite some time, since they had the DPI cars. Now, when those cars first ran here at Daytona, they held up pretty well, but this is a brand new configuration, hybrid power at Daytona for the first time. This is a high-speed track. There's going to be a lot more chances for a lot more stuff to break.
Yeah, definitely a very high-speed track, and that comes with its own set of dangers, its own reliability issues. It's definitely going to be. I usually only really watch at night anyway. I'm not, especially having a kid and stuff. I don't really get to watch during the day, and I'll probably scroll TikTok for a couple hours, remember the race is on, and then catch it right as I'm about to fall asleep, like I always do. So fun stuff happens at night, but we'll see if anything happens fun while I'm watching.
Yep, I will see. I will definitely have it on at some point, whether it be on the computer, TV, phone, carrier pigeon. I'll be watching it somewhere while I'm out. This is always a fun race for me. These are the pole sitters, by the way, in all 5 classes. I mentioned GTP. Meyer Shank will be leading them to the pole, or leading them to the green. PR1 Mathiasen Motorsports will lead the LMP2s to the green. For your LMP3s, Sean Creech Motorsports, the number 33, Ligier will lead them to the green. And in GT Daytona, well, the pro category kind of got embarrassed because the top 4 GT Daytonas, Windward Racing Mercedes-AMG, they're on the pole, the 17, the GT Pro of WeatherTech Racing, that Mercedes on the pole for GTD Pro. Top 3, are GTDs. Chris, I know it's 24 hours. I know the pro lineups are probably going to work it out. But do you think one of the Pro-Am teams is going to upset one of the professional teams this weekend?
It's possible. You never say no. For absolutely sure. I think the only thing that you could realistically do is put it on a probability scale. But I would definitely never say. I wouldn't say that the probability is 0 of an upset. I would probably put it under a 5, but maybe like a 3 or a 4 out of 10. But it's more unprobable than probable, but I personally don't put a lot of stock in it. What about you?
It's going to depend, obviously, on who makes mistakes when and who's fastest when, but I think it can happen. However, those pro categories, the pro, and the reason I keep saying pro is because in the GTD pro category, that's all professional platinum rated drivers, and then GTD is your professional drivers with, for lack of a better word, the dentists and the lawyers and the higher level executives whose hobby is to come out and be a professional race car driver, because dentists make GT3 racing go around. We can't get away from that. I know some people like to complain about the paid drivers, but for sports car racing, that's what they do. And without those type of teams, I don't know where we would be, really, with this class. So you kind of just take it, but a lot of those dentists and lawyers and higher-level executives, they're not bad race car drivers, and they will surprise you. So they could definitely get up there and challenge for the win. It's going to depend on what happens. Who crashes out, who has mechanical failures. I think we're going to see a lot of mechanical dramas out of the GTP category. The LMP2s, they are what they are right now. But GTD, going to be fun all night. It's usually those two classes put on the race of the entire thing. I was going to say the race of the weekend, because they're just so close together. I mean, back when that was GT Le Mans, we'd have all 6 cars running like right there on the line the whole night. So it's going to be exciting. The race can be seen on NBC and USA all weekend. I would say we'd make our picks and who we think is going to win, but you want to make picks for a 24-hour race. Take a piece of paper, write it down, then ball it up and throw it in the trash. Because you're going to have no idea who's going to win this race until the last hour. And even then, it's not going to be set in stone. So we're not even going to try to make picks. What I will say, it's going to be a lot of fun. And you owe it to at least watch some of this race this weekend.
Yeah. I don't think I could have said it better myself, Daryl. Definitely, even if you can only tune in for 10, 15 minutes while you're, I don't know, laying in bed before you go to bed or something, it's worth turning on and watching and seeing what's going on and just catching part of the action, really.
So we'll see what happens, and of course we'll be watching that race all weekend long. And make sure you keep it locked on our Twitter, The Extra Mile. We'll have updates as the season goes on, or as the race goes along. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Formula One, well, they have some controversy. When don't they have controversy? But this might be a little bit more serious. We'll talk about this on the other side of the break. And our defending champion was running some virtual racing, and some mess went down. We'll talk about it on the other side of this break here on the Extra Mile on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That give you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
I'm not sure, but let me get us back in. And we are back here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Daryl and Chris here with you this evening. We're going to get into the news from the Formula One off season, and there's just a lot of controversy that I can say that has come out. And for once, okay, some of it kind of involves Red Bull, but it doesn't involve Mercedes and Red Bull. It's really Max and sim racing and Red Bull and Andretti and Formula One and the FIA. And I think I want to start, we'll take lowest controversy first, and that is Verstappen and the virtual Le Mans 24. He ran that race on R Factor 2, which is owned by Motorsports Games. That was a couple of weekends ago. His team was actually leading that race, Chris, by about a minute. And unfortunately, they had server issues all day long. And I'll get into some of the issues in a minute. He ended up getting dropped out. They lost 2 laps. They tried to get their laps back. They were not given back by race control. So Verstappen rage quit and basically said he's not going to run the race anymore. And after what happened in the race, I kind of agree, because there were 2 red flags because someone hacked the servers and kicked all the drivers off. For a total of 3 hours, this happened. There was also an issue pretty much all day where drivers were just getting dropped out of the server randomly. Going back to the red flags, those were so long they had to cancel the rain probability for the event, so the race basically ran in the dry, which is neither here nor there, but all sorts of technical issues that really plagued the race. And this is the 3rd year out of 4 since it's been on R Factor 2, which is a online or single player and multiplayer sim owned by Motorsports Games, and I'll get to them in a minute. That has had issues, and Max Verstappen basically teed off on the field, on the game, on Motorsports Games, on the ACO for giving them the license, and basically said he's not going to race it anymore, and he's not, if the event wants to be taken seriously, it needs to move game. Now, we all know the importance sim racing took in 2020 when we didn't have any racing. And now we're here, 2023, the sanctioning bodies have gotten into it. They're starting to pay all this money to have virtual racing series, to give it to a team that built the world famous NASCAR 21 Ignition, which none of us even played because it was so bad, because we were waiting for it to get fixed. And it never got fixed. That's how bad it is. Motorsports Games should not have that license. I am terrified about what's going to happen when the IndyCar game comes out, because they're also making the IndyCar game. But just to round it all back to the point and get Chris in here, Max Verstappen is an avid sim racer. He just got his plane modified so that he can sim race in the air. He is addicted to sim racing. When he is calling out When he's calling out your
literally just reading
program, you
that.
know you have a problem. I knew you were going to bring that up too.
I was going to find the actual quote because I think it's worth reading on air.
Yes.
And so I just typed in Max Verstappen sim racing, and the first thing that pops up is news from yesterday about how he's converting his plane to do sim rig racing while he's in the air. And apparently Marco was after the whole deal with the race that we're obviously talking about. Helmut Marko was asked about whether he'd be focusing more on proper racing instead of virtual, and he said the opposite is the case. He just had his private plane converted, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, man. But yeah, I mean, Max is an avid gamer. He was rated top 15 in the world in FIFA for a while. But yeah, I'm still trying to find the quote.
I did not know he played FIFA.
Yeah, he was
at that high of a level.
Yeah,
I think I go ahead.
Yeah, he was like top 15 in the world or something.
Mm-hmm. I think I found the quote on Traxian.gg. They have it here.
He was 21st in the world in 2019.
That's crazy. I mean, that's the dude loves his video games, but Traxian.gg has the quote. I wish we could play the quote over here, but technology isn't on our side today. But you prepare for 5 months to try and win this championship. You're leading the championship. You try and win this race that you prepare for 2 months, and then they handle it like this, said Verstappen. This is after they decided to park the car. People are still getting disconnected, and now, of course, also at one point we were hit by it. Then they are just not dealing with it because they need more people to disconnect. Honestly, it's a joke. You cannot call this an event. It's a clown show. That's why it's better to retire the car, because driving around in P15 for 6 hours makes no sense for everyone. It's a disgrace for all the effort we put in as a team. I hope the organizers really consider where they put this race forward, because on this platform, it's not going to work. That's it. Game over. I think I have more chance if I go to Vegas and go to the casino. I have more chance to win. That was Max Verstappen after it happened.
You can't say that he's not creative with his insults.
Absolutely not.
I mean, he was relentless, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
I mean, he talks about all the months of preparation that go into this, and then to have it over in just a couple hours because you can't get your SHIT together. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I used to sim race like religiously. I don't run it as much anymore, but when you are preparing for a race in a season, and I used to run a NASCAR sim league, FTSR, we raced on Sunday after the cup race. You basically start on Monday doing your practice to get ready for a race. For something like this, where they had to pay 2,500 euros to enter, by the way, kind of buried the lead on that. You spend 5 months and 2,500 euros getting ready for a race for it to end like that. Personally, I think Max was too kind. I think he should have went off more, because if that's my money I just spent and these are the servers we're getting for 2,500 euros, I'm fighting somebody. Like, there are actual, like, Williams Esports had a team in this. Actual F1 teams had esports teams in this event. There were plenty of real-world drivers in this event, and this is how it went down. Now, Motorsports Games has been in controversy most of the winter. There's been complaints from their Russian dev teams that they haven't been getting paid, to the point that somebody threatened to leak source code like 4 of their games. We know the state NASCAR Ignition 21 is in. There's been conversations that NASCAR Ignition 23 isn't going to happen. It's going to get rolled over to Ignition 24. The IndyCar game, I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm terrified of what that game is going to look like if NASCAR Ignition is anything to go off of, and what R Factor is anything to go off of, because all three of those games are built off the same platform. If you're going to get these licenses, and if you're going to put on these top flight esports events, you've got to have your crap together. Because you've got guys like Max Verstappen that have a big audience. And if they love your game, you make a lot of money. But if they don't love your game, if they hate your game, if they're telling their audience that they're not going to play their game anymore, you're going to go bankrupt. And that is where Motorsports Games is right now as a company. And the way things have been going, I don't know how they survived this year. They just have controversy after controversy after controversy.
Yeah. Like we kind of discussed when Motorsports took over NASCAR. I didn't even buy it. It looked so bad. And I'm glad that I didn't, because nobody had anything good to say about it. And I mean, it's very possible that they could have, turned away someone like people like us who would definitely be buying games at least biannually. I'd buy a game every other year. That's what I usually try to do with sports games anyways, every other year. But they've kind of, it's what I've read about that game almost turned me off to buying NASCAR games at all. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I would probably get a iRacing. Now that I got like a good computer, I'll probably just get an iRacing setup before I actually get a console game or anything really that's coming out with the official NASCAR name, just because it's hard to trust something after that trust has been broken. And for me, it wasn't even really broken, but nobody had anything good to say about it, so it more or less broke my trust without even having to.
You only get one shot with gamers, and when you make a mistake, it's very hard to get that goodwill back. And it's especially harder when it really appears that you haven't even tried to get that goodwill back. So Motorsports Games has a lot they have to fix if they want to stay around, and we'll see if they fix it. But somebody will be up there to pick up the pieces if they don't. That's what I will say about that. Speaking of picking up the pieces, we're going to go to this next one. Andretti Cadillac Formula One, also known as Michael Andretti saying, y'all gonna let me in this when it comes to Formula One. If you've been following the saga that is Michael Andretti trying to get an F1 team, he has basically, he got the money together, he had a deal with Renault. Now he has a deal with Cadillac because Formula One said, they want a new manufacturer, so he went and did that. Now there's a conversation that $200 million might not be enough. They want to raise the fee to $500 to $600 million a year. I'm like, hold on, you haven't had anybody pay the $200 million fee. Now you're trying to say that's not enough when no one's even bought it yet? Like, at this point, it's heading to court because it sounds like antitrust behavior. And I am not an attorney, so do not take my legal advice or anything. But if I'm an antitrust attorney in the United States, I'm looking up Andretti's phone number because as far as I'm concerned, and Chris, you might agree, Formula One is not negotiating in good faith when it comes to this whole deal. They keep moving the goalpost and moving the goalpost, and it feels like they're not going to be happy until we're in court. That's
not a statement that I would disagree with by any means. They are definitely taking advantage of the willingness of one particular team. It's not even like there's a bunch of teams knocking down the door and there's competition for a new team. Mm-hmm. There's really only one team that's really pounding down the door to get in, and they're doing everything they can to discourage this team to the point where I don't even, like, if I was this team, I would just be done. I'd say, okay, whatever. You don't want the 200 million? That's fine. Screw you guys. But, obviously there's a legacy there. And the desire to get in, but my God, Formula One, just get over yourselves and take the 200 million, be happy, get new fans, because you will get a ton of American fans with this move.
I mean, it's a second American team as well.
Yeah. And it's similar to Haas. It's an established American team. And I don't see what negative is. Sorry. I don't see what negative is going to come. I really only see positives that can be taken away from this. But obviously Formula One is, worried or something about this extra team, and it's unnecessary.
I don't know what they're worried about. I mean, the main complaint has been, well, we're going to have to give up less prize money. No, you're not. Y'all only pay the top 10 teams anyway. So I don't see that changing unless there's something in the agreement that says you have to make the money go down for 11 teams, which I haven't seen that in the Concord agreement. So unless Williams is going to lose out on the money, because we know that's the team that's going to end up 11th with what they're doing, I don't really see what the problem is. And any short-term money that you lose from Andretti coming in, you're going to gain back in the extra fans, the extra exposure, the extra sponsorship that's going to come from whoever sponsors the Andretti team, the extra interest from the United States, which is going to just go through the roof when you get two extra teams, not to mention you've got a third race in America, and you could probably put a fourth somewhere, depending on what you'd want to do, because you've got Miami, you got Texas, and you got Vegas. You might be able to put something in California, or you might be able to finally do something in New York. But I see this move, if I'm not being short-sighted and chasing the long money instead of the short money, if this works, and I have no reason to doubt it wouldn't, because Andretti Motorsports, they put together some good teams over their period and racing in everything. They just won a FE race a couple of weeks ago. They're getting ready to race in Riyadh this weekend, but I don't really see an issue other than greed as to why Andretti isn't being welcomed with open arms. And I just don't get it. Like, they're trying to hold on to the short money and not trying to cultivate the long money, and that's to their detriment, in my opinion.
You're absolutely right. It's a short-sighted decision that could come back to bite them if they're successful in what their ultimate mission is, which is obviously to discourage new teams from coming in. That's, like I said, eventually Andretti's just going to say fine and be done with it. And they're going to miss out on a wonderful opportunity. And not only that, but someone who is going to come in and wants to win a championship. They're not coming in here just for the prestige of being a Formula One team. These guys want to come in and they want to win.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think 26 cars is good. That way you get enough turnover every year as far as drivers to where the F2 champion is almost guaranteed a seat. You get a couple more drivers from international, because obviously Andretti's just going to bring his two IndyCar drivers, Colton Herta and probably Alexander Rossi isn't racing there anymore, but he'll bring Colton Herta and someone else over from that team, so that gets you a bona fide American driver on the grid. It's all positive to me, and I don't get it. And I think the teams need to get their heads out there, where, and be down with it. The biggest problem, though, have you been paying attention to this news the last couple of weeks between the FIA and the F1 over the sports valuation?
I have caught a little bit of it, not a whole lot. But I had sent you that article. I read that article, and it was quite the scathing summarization of what it was. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the rumor is that at some point, the Saudi investment fund, which has been linked to a now quashed rumor that they were going to try to buy WWE, apparently we're going to try to buy Formula One for $20 billion. Now, Liberty Media is not selling, and they've said so much in an article I read earlier today. They are not selling, so I don't even know why they even tried that. Neither side has even acknowledged that this was even true, so who knows? But that's not the important part. Ben Soleimani, and I apologize, Ben, if I butchered your last name, is the head of the FIA, and basically made comments that the $20 billion valuation of Formula One is exaggerated. Now, my opinion, valuations are about as worth as much as the paper they're written on. I mean, there was a company here by the name of Nikola that was like $1 billion company, and they hadn't put out a single truck. They were supposedly building natural gas powered trucks. No, it's hydrogen powered trucks, excuse me. And they had $1 billion valuation, sorry. And all this thing, couldn't find out the company was a giant scam at the time. They still exist. The old CEO got kicked out. They're trying to build something. We'll see how that goes, but I'm digressing. That got Formula One really, really mad because FIA is a sanctioning body. Formula One is its own independent entity. Well, the Formula One lawyers sent a scathing letter to the FIA accusing Ben of meddling in the affairs of the sport, of tampering with his evaluation, to the point that they threatened to sue the FIA. Now, how this whole thing with the FIA and the F1 works is the FIA has a 110-year lease out with whoever buys Formula One to run it. And the European Union basically said the FIA is to only be a regulatory body. They're not supposed to have any control over the financial side of F1. There was a tweet, I cannot remember the guy's name, and I apologize, that basically said the FIA may have broke European Union law over this, hence the lawsuit threat. Now, I didn't have Formula One FIA split on my 2023 bingo card, but between this, the Andretti Cadillac situation where the FIA has been receptive and the Formula One teams have not been, the relationship between these two entities, Chris, is deteriorating quickly.
Yeah, and I think would you agree we've seen that coming?
It almost happened in 2009, so
Yeah,
I'm not surprised.
But more recently, though, I mean, is this something that was it something you were surprised to see, or were you like, that's probably par for the course at this point?
I mean, Formula One's always got some sort of political nonsense going on that has nothing to do with the racing. So I'm not surprised that we have this story, and this is probably going to be the main political story, the main political subtext for the 2023 season. Are they going to fall apart? My answer is yes, because the teams have not gotten along with the FIA. John Todt kind of kept it together. After Max Mosley almost destroyed it in the early 2000s. Then we almost had the split in 2009 when they were talking about the original cost cap, which kind of screwed over the three teams they brought in for 2010 because they didn't put the cost cap in because Ferrari was threatening to leave, and that's why all three of those teams died. And then they're trying to use that justification for why Andretti shouldn't be let in now. That's a whole other thing. But it just feels like this is heading for a messy, destructive, public divorce. and it could very well come this year, the way things are heading.
Yeah, I would agree. It's going to be a storyline that's worth watching, especially once we get into testing and these guys are all back together for the first time this year. It's going to be interesting to see what people in the sports opinions are on what's going on, because that when the media gets the chance to talk to these drivers and team principals, that's going to be one of the first questions that gets asked. And it's going to be interesting to see what people in the industry actually have to say about it. We're getting the public relations, the nice polished version, but we're going to be seeing the raw side of it here once we get to testing.
Mm-hmm. And we know Christian Horner is going to give us his opinion. We might hear from Toto Wolff as well. Other drivers and teams will probably try to tiptoe around it to not deal with it, but it's going to be a story for the entirety of the season, and those are just some of the details. And we haven't even gotten to the big car reveals, which start next month. We start revealing cars and getting ready for testing, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Formula One is back. NASCAR is also coming back next week with the Clash. I cannot believe the Clash is next week, by the way. And it's exciting. But we're going to take another break. We're going to come back. We'll get into a little bit of the NASCAR, some of the things that have been going on this week with NASCAR. Saturday Night Hydroplane League is also, we're going to have our biggest race of the year on Saturday. I'll preview that when we come back on this edition of the Extra Mile on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, everybody? This is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you. Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
It's IE Sports Radio. It is your direct feed for all that is sports. It is Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris every Tuesday night right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris is the most comprehensive view on Philadelphia sports exclusively right here on IE Sports Radio. You know what it is, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tuesday night, IE Sports Radio, Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris.
And we're back here on the Extra Mile on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Daryl and Chris with you for the final segment of the show. And fans, you're going to want to check out Saturday Night Hydroplane League on Facebook at 7 p.m., pre-race at 6:30 in the East, as we go racing for the Easton Eagles Entertainment Gold Cup for the Rusio Talk SNHL Division 1, the biggest race of this season. And it has been a wild season on the virtual water in Saturday Night Hydroplane League, as our defending champion, Eddie Canfouche, well, he's on the ropes right now for the championship, only 9th this year after missing the last time out in Madison. But the driver leading the race by 870 points, our top two are the top two that were in Division 2 last year, Brian Ollinger in Miss Presley May, Tyler Sams and Miss Nos Energy. They were the top two of the junior division last year. They came to the top division, and they are right where they left off. And Chris, would be the equivalent of Chase Elliott. Oh, let me try to think about this real quick, because I got to think about the two seasons. This would be the equivalent of Noah Gregson and Ty Dillon coming up after running in the championship for last year in Xfinity and coming up and doing the same thing in Cup this year. That is how good they've been this year, minus the drama on the Ty Dillon, on the Ty Gibbs part. But it's been an exciting season so far. The 5th season heading into virtual Detroit. Hopefully we have real racing at Detroit this year. That racing gets started at 6:30. We're going to have some former virtual Gold Cup winners taking part in the race as well, to try to add another win in their tally in the biggest race in inboard unlimited virtual hydroplane racing, before they go racing for the greatest title in inboard hydroplane racing in the real world later on this season. So you want to join us this Saturday night? I'll have to pull myself away from the Rolex 24 for the Easton Eagles Entertainment SNHL Gold Cup. It's going to be fun. You're going to want to join us. 6:30, we go pre-race, 7 o'clock, Heat 1A. So that is my shameless plug for the Saturday Night Hydroplane League. Love doing that broadcast the last 3 years. And now we go into some things that have been going on with NASCAR. The silly season's been kind of calm because everything was kind of decided before we ended the year in Phoenix. But we did have a 2-day test in Phoenix right now. Unfortunately, there were some new testing. There were some new testing pieces they were putting on for a possible new road and short track package. Unfortunately, they did not get the gains out of it that they wanted. They had a 2.5-inch spoiler, or 2-inch spoiler on the car. It made them harder to drive, but it did not affect their ability to pass. Same ability to pass, just a lot harder to drive. So, unfortunately, they will not be going with any aerodynamic aids for the short tracks and the road courses in 2023, which, Chris, that's a shame, because those races were kind of the lull points of the season compared to how good the intermediates were.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? The short tracks were really just uninteresting, to say the least, and very similar with the road courses as well. There wasn't quite the same amount of action that we're used to seeing, and it's a real shame that they weren't able to make any progress on this because I'm personally a big fan of short track racing and also road course racing. Historically, intermediates have been a little blah, so to speak. They definitely leave you wanting. And but this new package did a really good job of addressing the intermediate 1.5 tracks, but it you found wanting at the short tracks and the road courses, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're gonna have to figure that out going on to next season. Or the most they're probably gonna have to put more power to it. I know they don't want to do 2 different engine combinations again, but they might have to. That's the only thing I can think of. Or just do 750 all around, except for, of course, Daytona and Talladega. We don't want to put anybody in the front row, but that's not much you can do about that. They also did a testing with a muffler that they're going to put on for Chicago and the LA Coliseum, just to lower the noise a little bit. They were thinking of extending it to short tracks as well in the future. I don't know if they're going to do that because the fan reaction, you know those fans that keep saying they don't watch NASCAR anymore, although they always have a comment on NASCAR? Yeah, those folks came out and it was brutal. Their complaints about the muffler, but folks, it's for 2 races out of 30. Well, we got
6.
36?
6. Yeah.
And then we have 39 total, the 36-point races and the 3 races that don't count. It's 37 of the 39 races that aren't going to have this muffler, and you're complaining about 2. Yeah. That's what we're doing. It's going to be a long season on NASCAR Twitter. I can tell you that one already. If this is how we're starting, we haven't even gotten to the Clash next week, where Wiz Khalifa is supposed to be performing. So buckle your seatbelts if you're part of NASCAR Twitter. This is going to get ugly. So we are coming to the end of this episode. It is the first episode of the year. It's so fun to be back. We've got the Rolex this weekend, the Clash next week. We go rolling right into Daytona and F1 testing, all the way into IndyCar and the NHRA, which starts in March as well. Chris, the racing season is back. I'm so happy to be back here with all the fans and all of you.
Yeah, I'm sick, but I'm definitely looking forward to being back. We've got a long season ahead of us. We got 39, 40 straight weeks of seeing each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, even more than that, really. We're probably like 42, just because obviously we're starting a couple weeks before the season. But I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm ready. Bengals are still in the playoffs, though, so we can slow down a little bit.
Hey, the season will be over before NASCAR season starts, so we'll be good to go.
Correct. We got a big weekend this weekend here, and and then obviously, assuming we win on Sunday this week, we got 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, so we're still in it. So the Bengals are getting a lot of my time and effort right now. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to being back, Daryl, and long season. We got a lot of nights sitting down here.
And if you want to follow us on social media, remember I'm at DK Junior 12. Chris is at Fiji Sims. Make sure you follow our TikTok, the Extra Mile Pod. We have a lot on there. I'm going to try to do some updates of the Rolex 24 this weekend as well. And make sure you keep it locked to the iSports Radio pages on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Also, check out www.isportsradio.com and get involved with the Patreon. $5 gets you a shout out on all of our shows. And higher tiers include the Podcasting University, free merch, and a chance to be on our flagship show, The Defining Moment. Thank you all so much for keeping iSports Radio your feed for all that is sports.
So, for those of you listening, we are going to be back with a new game this year. Mm-hmm. So we will tell you about it as the season gets a little nearer, but we already have the template worked out and we got the rules package set in. So I personally, I'm really looking forward to this new updated nearest the win, if we still call it that. We're not really sure. There's a couple things that still iron out yet, but we will share those details with you. But stay tuned for a new game, and we look forward to everybody participating with us this year. And Daryl's obviously our reigning champion.
Finally,
we're each one-time champions right now, and so we'll see which one of us, Daryl, gets to raise the Lombardi at the end of this season.
We'll see who breaks the tie. It's a lot of fun to actually get the championship in the fantasy game for the show you started.
5 years
took me
later.
long enough. Right. It took me long enough, but I finally got that win. So, but hey, also make sure you follow. If you missed this episode, any iSports Radio show can be heard anywhere you can get your podcast, and of course the YouTube repository, which has a backlog of all of our episodes from every iSports Radio show that has ever existed. So make sure you check that out. So the first checkered flag of the season is out here for the extra mile. For Chris, I'm Daryl. Thank you so much for joining, and we will see you at the next green flag. Good night, everybody.